Well, if you're in the central and eastern U.S., you're probably cold on this Black Friday. We're going to look at the chill and plus the huge lake effect snow event. Snow's going to add up to over 5 feet initially and look, multiple storms. And I'm going to tell you why I think there's the chance of a big storm at some point coming into December. And it looks like, at least in my mind, as we kind of look back at the way things have performed in the past. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and I want you to know that I honestly thank all of you for coming by and watching these videos, and I appreciate you all helping me grow this channel over the last year or so. If it's your first time, I'm Travis Roberts. I used to be on TV. I was a chief meteorologist for years, but now we're here on YouTube. So that's my background briefly. I'm not in that business anymore, but I do these videos when time allows here on YouTube. Let's talk about the snow that's across Canada, because that is a big deal as this cold air. Look at this pattern, guys. I want to show you. As this cold air builds here, it moves south. It's not getting modified. So we're just going to continue to feed that cold air into the eastern United States and into the central U.S. This is the 700 millibar chart. This is just a good way to look at that flow. So don't get too caught up into these temperatures. They don't really matter so much at the surface, although they do reflect what's going on. I do want to show you this because as we get towards the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, somewhere in that range into December, this trough across the east starts to break. Boom, right there. You start to see some buckles in this trough. And I think that right there would be when we would see our storm. Snow totals over the next several weeks. Again, I think the big deal will be here with clipper systems and lake effect snow in this broad northwest flow. Let's just jump straight to it. As we move through the rest of Friday into tonight, that lake effect snow is going to continue with a strong westerly flow. Our flow really kind of coming in like this. But with a decent fetch off of the lakes, the water temperatures are above average for this time of year. No ice on the Great Lakes. Eventually, if it stays this cold, we're going to start to see them freeze over. It may be the most ice we've seen in quite some time if it continues to stay this cold. And then as we head into Monday and Tuesday, high pressure continues to build in. And then we've got our next storm starting to take shape here across the Canadian prairies as a clipper system moves in. Another one behind that. 2 storms on the way heading into next week that I think we've got to pay very close attention to. The lake effect snow machine is on. We've got the snow. We've got the cold here across Wisconsin, Minnesota. Temperatures in the teens for most areas through the Ohio Valley into the Northeast, into the Mid-Atlantic. Temperatures will be dropping today. Another cold night tonight in most of these areas. Probably one of the coldest nights of the year so far, especially back here across Minnesota, below 0 temperatures. As that air moves across Lake Michigan, look at the influence we're having. Single digits back here, and then we're into the 20s. So that heat, latent heat being released in the form of clouds, and we're creating snow. Downwind of the lakes a little bit warmer as we see that precipitation form. Look at the future radar. I think this is really impressive. Snow plumes just pounding east of the lakes here off of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. That will continue. Look, now we're into Sunday. Going into Monday, we've got multiple lake effect snow warnings here north of Cleveland. I think this is where the band sets up because you've got this fetch here, and some would argue it's actually originating back across Lake Michigan. You've got some of that moisture. It gets enhanced a little bit, I guess, by Lake Michigan. Now you're really picking up on a long fetch here into northeast Ohio, northwest Pennsylvania, including Erie, and then into the lake areas of New York. Places like Dunkirk, Jamestown, those areas are going to get some big snow. And we may actually see some snow also into parts of Detroit. The snow continues across Michigan, and then we're going to watch this weak clipper system that may drop a little bit of snow back across parts of Missouri, Indiana, Illinois. Maybe our first light snow event for Kentucky, places like Louisville, Lexington. Not a lot, a couple of inches of snow out of this, but your big snow is going up off of Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. Lake Huron also dumping some heavy snow over into Canada. Let's talk about this heavy snow that's just going to be going through Monday, because after this, there's more, believe it or not. I can't even imagine how much snow there's going to be on the ground here east of Lake Ontario and east and southeast of Lake Erie. These lake effect snow warnings are in effect now through Monday night. Some of the models are putting out over 5 feet of snow. The official warning for Jefferson, Oswego, and Lewis counties, total snow around 4 to 5 feet in some of the heavier snow bands. Big snows too. East of that, we could see anywhere in this region up to 1 foot or 2, but Jefferson, Oswego, and Lewis counties are going to get the most here. Off to the southeast of that, now Buffalo under a lake effect snow warning. This band probably going to shift north. The further south you live in Buffalo, the closer you're going to be to that heavy snow. So head south of town on I-90, and the snow is going to really pick up. Man, I don't know if we see 44 inches in Dunkirk. You're right there along Lake Erie, but move inland just a little bit, and that snow picks up. Over toward Jamestown, not maybe as much, but still, I think we're talking about several feet of snow, especially if we can get that band of snow to set up. And down towards Erie, same thing here. I don't think it's impossible to think that we see more in these areas because if we get that persistent snow band, it's going to be wild. And this could shut roads down when you get that much snow. Even in places like western New York, where we're used to this kind of snow, when you get snowfall rates of 3 to maybe 4 inches of snow an hour, that's impressive. And there is enough instability, temperature differences between the lake, which is, again, pretty warm relative. You get near there and you're at least in the upper 30s to low 40s. You got air temperatures in the teens, go up a couple thousand feet, and you're well below zero. That's going to create what we call steep lapse rates, rapid rising air, thunder snow, probably going to be happening with these strong bands of snow and decent snows here into Michigan. We've talked about that with more on the way heading into next week. There's that stripe of snow as we head into Saturday. So maybe a little bit of, well, I don't know if you call it Christmas snow yet, but let's go ahead and call it that. We're into Black Friday anyway and heading into the weekend. Thanksgiving is over. That snow moves east into parts of the Bluegrass State, into West Virginia and Virginia in the mountains here, southern Ohio. I don't think it gets very far north, but right along the border here, and maybe our first snow for places like Ashland into Charleston. We've had some snow, but this could be the first that sticks, especially if it can fall before the sun comes up on early Sunday morning. It's going to have a harder time into the afternoon, and I don't know that it makes it far east of the mountains. Once you get into Virginia, a little too warm here on the east side of the Appalachians. There's your snow. Total's not a lot here. Again, maybe 1 to 2 inches at most. Some areas on the north and south side of that may just see a coating to a dusting, and anywhere in between. If we're going to see some decent accumulation, it would probably be here in the mountains of West Virginia, 2 to 3 inches, maybe a little bit more in some of the highest spots. And the newest model, trying to put out some snow here, at least a couple of inches, a very thin stripe here in northern Missouri and central and southern Indiana here. Let's go beyond this. This is where things get interesting, I guess. Once we head into next week, cold Canadian high pressure. This is a polar air mass building into the central and eastern United States. Cold air all the way down to Florida, and your flow in here out of the north and northeast, making it feel cold for places like Jacksonville, even down to Orlando, temperatures dropping, and then along the Gulf Coast too. Not as cold, though, back across Texas, and I'm not going to leave the west out. I'm not talking about it much because not a lot is going on out here. A decent ridge here, high pressure, keeping us dry. We've gotten some snow to get the ski season started, so pretty nice. In fact, I was looking at Tahoe, some of the temperatures this week. Highs will be up near 50 with sunshine pretty much all week, so very nice across the west. Into the Intermountain West, you start getting cold, though, here. That lake effect snow is going to continue all the way through Tuesday, and this is not the end of it. I don't know that we end up with maybe by the end of next week, in some areas where those lake effect snow bands set up 6, 7, 8 feet of snow. I mean, over the next week and a half. Craziness with the setup. Here's your next clipper system. This could drop some accumulating snow across parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and not just lake effect. This is synoptic snow, large-scale weather feature snow with this low dropping in from the northwest. So now we're talking about Michigan, southern parts of Ontario, away from the lakes too. This is going to be driven again by the rising motion that low pressure is going to create. And that might bring some snow as far south as North Carolina and some rain showers into the southeast. How much snow are we talking about at this point? I think it's a little too early to tell. The GFS has been pretty robust, and I don't know that I believe it, but it's trying to bring some decent snows into the northeast. This was the overnight run. I mean, are we going to see snow down into New York City? I'll be honest with you, I don't think so. I'm going to show you the European. I think it has a better grasp on the temperature profile here. A little bit too warm, but this could put some snow into central Pennsylvania. I think northern parts of New Jersey, and get away from the water here into Connecticut, into Massachusetts, into Vermont, New Hampshire. I think that's where the best chance for snow will be. Boston, I'm going to say there's a chance, but I wouldn't hold my breath just quite yet with this particular storm. There's a look at the GFS totals if we were to believe that much snow would fall. Again, we're talking about a couple of inches here at best, especially once you get inland a little bit. More lake effect snow behind this. This is 3-day totals with that storm. Well, that would be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So downwind of Lake Erie and Ontario, we're talking about dumping another foot plus in some areas, also into parts of Ontario and Lake Michigan, off of Lake Superior as well. The European, a much different story, but it's solid on the idea that more lake effect is on the way. And once this storm moves out, that's just the first. I think this is where things get interesting. If you can get a weather pattern change in the midst of this cold air that's in place, you got to bring the warm air back north before a storm forms. GFS is trying to pick up on something happening around the 8th, 9th, and the 10th. Do I believe this? I don't, but the idea that something would move north in this weather pattern, I think is there. That's the GFS from this morning overnight, something like this was on there. The European, very similar. There's that storm we're looking at next weekend. And then as we get around the 9th and the 10th, boom. I mean, it's showing something with a decent trough digging in. You would expect a storm to form on this side of your trough. It's a little more progressive, and it brings in more clipper systems. And now we're starting to develop this east to west flow. I remember December 2008, maybe 2009. You had this kind of setup where things were going east to west. You got cold and you got snowstorms. But what does that really look like? I can tell you 2008, 9, and 10, those years were not normal winters. They were cold in the east. Are we looking at that? Time will tell. Thanks. Hope you guys have a great day. See you next time.